The blacksmith's hammer paused mid-swing when he caught the glow on the ridge, turning the wrong color against the evening sky. Varian Darrow had worked iron long enough to read fire like other men read script, and the orange-red smear above the charcoal burner's land spoke of collapse and ruin rather than the steady blue-white of a well-tended kiln. He set down his hammer, banking his own forge with practiced efficiency, and crossed the yard to where his mare waited in her shelter. The ride up the ridge road would take half an hour in gathering dark, but he depended on those kilns as much as any merchant depended on his suppliers. Without charcoal, his forge went cold. Without his forge, the village of Millhaven lost its only smith for 20 miles in any direction. The road wound through scrub pine and granite outcrops, climbing steadily. Rain had passed through earlier, leaving the path slick and the air heavy with the smell of wet stone. Varian guided his mare carefully, watching the glow intensify as he climbed. By the time he crested the final rise and saw the burner's clearing, he understood the full scope of the disaster. The main kiln had collapsed entirely, its carefully stacked dome of turf and clay reduced to a smoking heap. Charcoal lay scattered across mud-churned ground, hundreds of pounds of it exposed to air and moisture, hissing and sparking where embers still lived. The second kiln stood intact but unattended, its vents closed in what looked like a hasty attempt to preserve at least one batch. Movement caught his eye near the ruined kiln. A figure knelt in the mud, working with desperate intensity to salvage pieces of charcoal and pile them onto a canvas tarp. Varian dismounted and approached, his boots squelching in the saturated earth. The figure straightened at the sound, and Varian stopped short. She was an orc, though slighter than any he had seen before, built willowy and tall rather than broad. Rain-soaked hair hung in dark ropes past her shoulders, and mud streaked her green skin from collarbone to bare feet. She wore only a thin work dress, completely drenched, and she was shaking so hard her teeth chattered audibly even from 10 paces away. Small tusks jutted from her lower jaw, and her pointed ears lay flat against her skull in what might have been exhaustion or fear or both. "Where is Gareth?" Varian asked, naming the human charcoal burner who worked this land. The orc girl's jaw worked for a moment before words came. "Dead." 2 weeks. Her voice rasped, hoarse from smoke or shouting. "Fever took him. I am Thessa, I work for him." Worked. Varian absorbed this, glancing around the clearing. No other structures stood nearby, just the 2 kilns and a small storage shed. "You have been running this alone." Someone had to. She turned back to her salvage work, lifting another piece of charcoal with hands that trembled. "The village needs fuel. You need fuel. I know how he did it." She took 2 more steps and her knees buckled. Varian caught her before she hit the ground, and the cold that radiated from her body alarmed him more than the collapse had. She was frozen through, probably had been working in wet clothes since the afternoon rain, and her skin felt clammy beneath the mud. "Stop," he said firmly. "You will kill yourself. The charcoal is already lost if it has been exposed this long. Saving yourself matters more." He was already shrugging out of his heavy work coat, the thick leather and wool he wore against forge sparks. He wrapped it around her shoulders and she made a small sound, something between protest and relief. You can still freeze to death in the next hour if you do not get dry and warm." Varian made the words blunt because she looked ready to argue. "Is there shelter?" Gareth had a cabin. Thessa pointed with a shaking hand toward a path that led deeper into the trees. "There." He helped her walk, one arm supporting her weight as she stumbled over roots and stones. The cabin proved small but sound, a single room with a stone hearth and a sleeping pallet. Varian got the fire going while Thessa stood dripping on the threshold, still wrapped in his coat. "Change into something dry," he told her. "I will turn my back." He heard her move behind him, heard the wet fabric hit the floor and the rustle of cloth from a trunk. When she spoke again, her voice came steadier. "You can look now." She had found a man's shirt, probably Gareth's, that hung to her knees, and she had pulled the coat back on over it. She was still shivering, but color had begun to return to her face. Varian gestured to the hearth. "Sit close to the fire. When did you last eat?" "Yesterday morning." He bit back a curse and returned to his mare, retrieving the bread and cheese he had packed for his own evening meal. When he came back inside, Thessa sat exactly where he had left her, staring into the flames with an expression he could not read. He pressed the food into her hands. "Eat," she obeyed, tearing into the bread with startling hunger. Varian settled on a stool across from her and waited, giving her time. The fire crackled and popped. Outside, full darkness had fallen, and the ruined kiln's glow faded to nothing. Finally, when she had finished eating and some of the trembling had subsided, he said, "Tell me what happened." Thessa pulled his coat tighter around herself. "Gareth took sick 3 weeks ago. Fever, cough, could not keep anything down. I nursed him as best I could, but it got worse. He died in his sleep 14 days back. I buried him on the south slope where he said his wife was. You stayed." "I did not know where else to go." Her eyes met his, dark and direct. "Gareth found me last spring, half-starved on the road. He needed help with the kilns and did not care what I was. He taught me the work I owed him. So you kept the kilns running." "I tried." Bitterness crept into her voice. "I got one batch through. The second kiln there, it should be good charcoal once it cools. But this one, I stacked the dome wrong. Too much weight on the south side. When the rain came and the ground shifted, the whole thing came down. I have been trying to save what I could since noon." 8 hours of digging charcoal out of mud in wet clothes. Varian shook his head. "You could have died." "I know my work. I knew the risk. I mean from cold, not fire." That stopped her. She looked down at the coat wrapped around her, then back at him. "Why do you care? You do not know me." "I know you have been keeping my forge supplied for months without my realizing it. That counts for something." Varian leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I am Varian Darrow, the smith in Millhaven. Gareth sold me charcoal every week. Good charcoal, consistent quality. If you have been making it, you did fine work." Something shifted in her expression, a cautious hope. "Then you will still buy from me, if you can produce it, yes." He paused, considering. "But you cannot work this alone. It is too much for one person." "I managed until today." "And today you nearly killed yourself. What happens next time something goes wrong? What happens in winter when you need to tend fires around the clock?" Thessa's shoulders hunched beneath the coat. "I will figure it out. I always do." The stubborn set of her jaw reminded Varian of himself at her age, too proud to ask for help, too desperate to admit limitations. He recognized the trap she was in. An orc alone on the frontier had few options. Most villages would not even let her through the gates. "How old are you?" he asked. 19 summers. Young then, though she carried herself older. Varian made a decision that would probably complicate his life considerably, but felt necessary anyway. "I will help you rebuild the kiln," he said. "And I will spread word in the village that the charcoal supply continues under new management. But you need to accept that some things require assistance." "Agreed." Thessa studied him for a long moment, searching his face for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her, because she nodded. "Agreed." They spent the next hour making plans. Thessa knew the work but lacked materials for the rebuild. Varian had contacts among the clay diggers and turf cutters. She could manage the daily tending but needed help with heavy lifting. He knew 2 village boys who would work for fair wages and keep their mouths shut about their employer's race. By the time Varian rose to leave, full night had settled over the ridge. Thessa walked him to the door, still wearing his coat. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for the food, the fire. For not leaving me to freeze. Keep the coat tonight, you need it more than I do." She pulled it closer. "I will return it when you come back." Varian swung into his saddle and gathered the reins. 3 days. I will bring the clay and tools then." He rode down the ridge road under cold stars, already mentally rearranging his schedule to accommodate the kiln rebuild. It would cost him work time and materials, but good charcoal was worth the investment. That was what he told himself anyway, and not that the image of Thessa shivering in the mud had struck something in his chest that felt uncomfortably like responsibility. 3 days later, Varian returned with a cart full of clay, tools, and 2 nervous village boys named Peter and Samuel. The boys had agreed to the work readily enough when he mentioned the wages, but their enthusiasm dimmed noticeably when Thessa emerged from the cabin to greet them. She still wore his coat, he noticed. It hung open over a clean work dress, and she had rolled the sleeves back to keep them clear of her hands. She nodded to the boys with careful formality. "Thank you for coming. The work is hard but honest." Peter, the older of the 2 at 16, managed a jerky nod. Samuel, 14 and gangly, just stared. Varian stepped between them smoothly. "Thessa knows kilns better than anyone in the region. You will follow her instructions exactly." "Understood." Both boys mumbled agreement and the work began. Rebuilding a charcoal kiln was an exercise in precision and patience. The base had to be perfectly level, the wood stacked in exact patterns to allow air flow, the dome constructed with careful attention to weight distribution. Thessa directed them through each step with quiet competence, demonstrating techniques Gareth had taught her, and a few she had developed on her own. Varian found himself watching her more than the work. She moved with an economy of motion he associated with experienced craftspeople. Nothing wasted, every gesture purposeful. When she explained why a particular placement mattered, her voice took on an intensity that suggested deep understanding rather than rote memorization. By midday, they had the base complete and were beginning the dome structure. The boys had relaxed somewhat, focused more on the work than on Thessa's tusks and green skin. Varian broke out the lunch he had brought, and they sat in the clearing eating bread and dried meat. "How did Gareth learn to build like this?" Peter asked between bites, directing the question at Varian rather than Thessa. She answered anyway. "His father taught him, and his father's father before that. The family has burned charcoal on this ridge for 4 generations." "What happened to the rest of them?" Samuel ventured. "War, sickness, bad luck. Gareth was the last." Thessa's gaze drifted to the southern slope where she had buried the old man. "He said the land remembers the work, even when the people are gone." Something in her tone made Varian ask, "Do you have family?" "Somewhere, maybe. I left my clan when I was 15. We did not part well." She did not elaborate, and Varian did not press. They finished eating and returned to work, completing the dome by late afternoon. Thessa inspected every inch of it, testing the stability, checking the vents. Finally, she stepped back and nodded. "It is good. We can load it tomorrow." The boys left with their wages and promises to return. Varian lingered, helping Thessa clean and organize the tools. The second kiln had cooled enough to unload, and they worked together to extract the charcoal and pack it for transport. "This is excellent quality," Varian said, examining a piece in the fading light. It was light, hard, rang like metal when tapped. "Better than some batches Gareth sold me." Thessa looked pleased. "I have been experimenting with the vent timing. Closing them earlier keeps more of the wood structure intact. They talked about charcoal and fire, about the chemistry of combustion and the properties of different woods. Varian found himself drawn into a technical conversation, unlike any he usually had in the village. Most people saw his work as mere labor, hammering hot metal into shapes. Thessa understood it as a process requiring precision and knowledge, the marriage of heat and material into something new. When he finally prepared to leave, the sun had dropped below the western ridge. Thessa walked him to his horse, and he noticed she still wore the coat despite the day's warmth. "You know I meant for you to keep that just the one night," he said, amused. She glanced down at it. "I know. But it is useful, all these pockets." She demonstrated, pulling various small tools from pockets he had forgotten existed, and the leather shoulders shed sparks well. "So you are stealing my coat, borrowing indefinitely." A small smile tugged at her mouth, softening the tusks. "Besides, it smells like your forge. Coal smoke and hot iron. It helps me think." Varian found he had no good response to that. He swung into the saddle and gathered the reins, then paused. "I will send the boys up again in 2 days to help with loading. And I will be back myself in a week to collect the charcoal. I will have it ready." He rode home through gathering dark, very aware that he had just allowed an orc girl he barely knew to keep his favorite work coat. When he tried to feel annoyed about it, all that surfaced was an odd warmth that had nothing to do with the evening temperature. Over the following weeks, a pattern established itself. Varian came up the ridge every week to collect charcoal and check on the kilns. Sometimes he brought the boys, sometimes he came alone. Thessa always wore the coat, and each time he saw it, he noticed new changes. She had reinforced the seams with a different weight of thread. She had added an interior pocket sized perfectly for carrying small notebooks. She had patched a worn spot on the left elbow with leather from a different source, the weave tighter and finer than the original. The coat was transforming under her hands, becoming something that was neither fully his anymore nor entirely hers, but rather a hybrid thing that existed in the space between them. The village noticed, of course. Millhaven was too small for secrets. When Varian arrived at the forge each morning wearing a different coat, people commented. When he mentioned his charcoal source had changed hands, questions followed. "What happened to old Gareth?" Thomas the miller asked one day, watching Varian work a commission. "Fever took him, few weeks back." "Who is running the kilns now?" Varian kept his eyes on the metal, shaping an axe head with careful strikes. "Someone who knows the work." That does not answer the question. It is all the answer needed. The charcoal is good, the price is fair, the supply is reliable. Thomas leaned against the forge wall, frowning. "People are saying you have been going up there regularly, spending time." "I have been collecting supplies for my trade. Novel concept, I know." "Varian, if there is something strange going on, there is nothing strange about a smith buying charcoal from a charcoal burner." Varian set down his hammer and met the miller's eyes directly. "Gareth had an apprentice who learned the trade. The apprentice continues the work." That is the whole story. It was not the whole story, but it was all he intended to share. Thomas left looking unsatisfied, and Varian returned to his work, knowing the questions would continue. They did. Over the next month, various villagers found excuses to visit the forge and probe for information. Varian deflected them all with the same bland responses, until most gave up. A few, sharper or more persistent, began to piece together the truth from the boys Peter and Samuel, who were less practiced at discretion. The day the full story broke, Varian was at the ridge helping Thessa repair the second kiln's door. They worked in comfortable silence, passing tools back and forth with the ease of long practice. when the sound of horses on the trail brought both their heads up. 3 riders emerged into the clearing: Thomas the miller, Eleanor Swift the village headwoman, and Marcus Trent, who owned the largest farm in the area. They pulled up short when they saw Thessa, and the temperature of the entire clearing seemed to drop several degrees. Eleanor dismounted first. She was a tall, weathered woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes went from Thessa to Varian to the coat Thessa wore, and her mouth pressed into a thin line. "So it is true," Eleanor said. Varian set down his tools and stood. "What is true?" "That you have been conducting business with an orc. That you have been coming up here regularly, alone, spending time with her." Eleanor's voice carried the weight of authority and disapproval in equal measure. "That you gave her Gareth's trade." "I did not give her anything." "She knew the work already. I simply continued buying from this source." Marcus Trent swung down from his horse, a big man with a red face and aggressive stance. "You brought an orc into our supply chain. Do you understand what that means?" "It means I have reliable access to quality charcoal." "It means you are supporting one of them." Marcus jabbed a finger toward Thessa, who had gone very still. "It means you are bringing orc taint into our village." Varian felt his jaw tighten. "Watch your tongue, Marcus, or what? You will defend this creature. She has you so twisted around you cannot see straight." "I can see that my forge produces necessary goods for this village using charcoal from this ridge, same as it has for years. The person burning that charcoal changed. The quality did not." Eleanor raised a hand, cutting off Marcus's next outburst. She approached Thessa, who stood her ground despite the obvious tension in her shoulders. "What is your name?" Eleanor asked. "Thessa Dane. Gareth gave me his surname before he died. Did he now?" Eleanor circled her slowly, assessing. "And how did you come to work for him?" "He found me on the road last spring. I was starving. He offered work and training in exchange for labor. I accepted." "Where is your clan, north of here?" "I left them 4 years ago." "Why?" Thessa's jaw worked for a moment. "They wanted me to marry a man I did not choose. I refused. They cast me out." Eleanor absorbed this. "So you have been wandering since then, alone, an orc woman on human roads." Her tone made it clear how dangerous and desperate that existence must have been. "I survived," Thessa said simply. "By attaching yourself to an old man, and now to our smith." "I attached myself to work, to a trade. Gareth taught me something valuable, and I repay his memory by continuing what he built." Thessa's voice remained level, but Varian heard the anger beneath it. "I do not cheat. I do not steal. I do not beg. I make a product people need and I sell it fair. If that offends you, I apologize, but I will not stop." Marcus scoffed. "You will if we forbid the smith from buying from you." "You cannot forbid me from choosing my suppliers," Varian cut in. "I am a craftsman, not a serf. I buy materials where I see fit." "And we can choose whether to do business with you," Marcus shot back. "See how long your forge lasts when the village takes their work elsewhere. The next nearest smith is in Oak Ridge, 20 miles south. Good luck getting your plows and tools repaired when you need them." Eleanor held up both hands. "Enough. Everyone calm down." She turned to Varian. "You understand this looks questionable. An established smith, respected in the community, spending time alone with an orc woman on a remote ridge. Giving her your coat. People talk, Varian. Let them talk. I have done nothing improper." "Have you not?" Eleanor's gaze was sharp. "Tell me honestly, is this purely business?" The question hung in the air. Varian opened his mouth to give the obvious answer, the safe answer, and found he could not, because the truth was more complicated. The truth was that he looked forward to his trips up the ridge. The truth was that he found Thessa's company engaging in ways that had nothing to do with charcoal. The truth was that seeing her in his coat pleased him for reasons he had not fully examined. His hesitation was answer enough. Aliner's expression shifted from disapproval to something closer to concern. Varian, think about what you are doing. Think about what you are risking. I am not risking anything. I am buying charcoal and occasionally helping a colleague with heavy work. You are courting disaster. Thomas spoke for the first time, his voice sad rather than angry. Even if your intentions are pure, people will assume the worst. And if your intentions are not pure, if there is something developing between you, that is even more dangerous. Why? The question came from Thessa, startling everyone. She stepped forward, still wrapped in Varian's coat, her chin raised in defiance. Why is it so dangerous for him to treat me like a person? Why does simple decency require this much justification? You know why, Marcus growled. Your kind and ours do not mix. My kind makes your charcoal, grows your food when we are allowed, builds and cleans and serves. We do all the work you deem beneath you, and still you call us tainted. Because you are violent, savage. I have never raised a hand in violence to anyone. Can you say the same? The question landed like a hammer blow. Marcus had been involved in 2 tavern brawls in the past year alone. His face reddened further, and his hand dropped to the knife at his belt. Varian moved without thinking, putting himself between Marcus and Thessa. Touch that blade and you will answer to me. You would threaten me over an orc. I would stop you from committing assault in front of witnesses. Think, Marcus. Think about what you are about to do. They stood frozen for a long moment, tension thick enough to choke on. Then Aliner's voice cut through it. Marcus, stand down. Now. The big farmer hesitated, then stepped back, his hand leaving the knife. Aliner looked between Varian and Thessa, her expression troubled. This cannot continue as it has been, she said finally. The village will not accept it. Already there is talk of boycotting your forge, Varian. If it becomes known that you are more than business associates with this woman, the consequences could be severe for both of you. So you are ordering me to stop buying from her. I am advising you to think carefully about your choices and their implications. Aliner mounted her horse. You have built a good reputation in Millhaven. Do not throw it away. The 3 riders left, and silence settled over the clearing. Varian and Thessa stood side by side, watching the dust from the horses' hooves dissipate in the afternoon light. You should listen to her, Thessa said quietly. I am not worth losing everything you have built. Varian turned to look at her. She was staring straight ahead, her face carefully blank, but her hands were clenched in the fabric of his coat. That is not your decision to make, he said. It should be practical, logical. You need the village's business more than you need my charcoal. Maybe, but I will not be threatened into abandoning a reliable supplier and a friend. Her head snapped toward him. Friend? Is that not what we are? He gestured at the clearing, the kilns, the work they had shared. We have spent hours talking, working together, solving problems. What else would you call it? Thessa's expression did something complicated. I thought I was just a convenient source of materials. You were at first. You stopped being just that somewhere around the 3rd week, when you explained the chemistry of wood pyrolyses better than any book I have read. Varian found himself smiling despite the tension of the confrontation. You are interesting, Thessa. You think about things deeply. You care about the quality of your work. Those are rare traits. She turned away, but not before he caught the flush darkening her green skin. You should still be careful. They were not making empty threats. I know, but I am not ready to bend to prejudice just because it is convenient. They returned to work on the kiln door, but something had shifted between them. Words that had been left unspoken now hung in the air, acknowledged if not fully addressed. Varian found himself hyper-aware of her presence, of each moment their hands brushed passing tools, of the way she moved and spoke and thought. When he left that evening, Thessa walked him to his horse as always. She stood with her arms wrapped around herself, his coat pulled tight despite the warm evening. "Thank you," she said, "for standing with me, for not backing down. It was the right thing to do, maybe, but doing the right thing often costs more than people are willing to pay." She met his eyes, and in hers he saw fear and hope tangled together. "I do not want to be the reason you lose everything." Varian wanted to tell her she was worth any cost, but that felt like too much truth too quickly. Instead, he said, "Let me worry about my own risks. You focus on making excellent charcoal." He rode home through twilight, troubled and uncertain. The confrontation had forced him to examine feelings he had been carefully not looking at. Friendship was true but incomplete. What he felt when he saw Thessa, when he talked with her, when she wore his coat like a second skin, went deeper than friendly regard. The question was what to do about it. Over the following weeks, the village made its displeasure known through small acts of economic pressure. A few customers who had regularly commissioned work found excuses to delay their orders. Marcus Trent loudly announced he would take his business to Oakridge. Others followed his lead, and Varian's workload shrank noticeably, but not everyone joined the boycott. Many villagers valued quality and convenience over prejudice, and Varian's skill remained unmatched in the region. He took the reduced work without complaint and continued his weekly trips up the ridge. If anything, the pressure pushed him and Thessa closer together. They fell into longer conversations, sharing more of their histories. He learned about her childhood in the Orc clan, the restrictive expectations for women, the marriage she had refused to a man twice her age. She learned about his early years as a journeyman smith, traveling between forges, learning from different masters. And she learned, piece by piece, about the guilt he carried. It came out one afternoon in late summer when Thessa asked why he kept no weapons on the forge wall, unusual for a smith. Varian's hands stilled on the rake he was repairing. "I do not make weapons anymore." "Why not?" He set down the rake carefully. 7 years ago, the region was at war with the northern clans, not Orc clans, he added quickly. Human raiders. The king called a levy and Millhaven had to send 20 men. They needed spears, axes, blades. I was young, eager to prove myself. I took the commission. Thessa waited, sensing there was more. I rushed the work. Took iron from a supplier I did not know well because my regular source could not fill the order in time. The weapons looked fine, passed inspection. The men marched north. Varian's voice had gone flat, emotionless. 3 weeks later, a courier came back, 6 men dead. The spearheads had shattered in the first engagement, brittle as glass. Men died because they trusted weapons I made. "That was not your fault," Thessa said quietly. "Bad metal was my responsibility to detect. I am a smith. Knowing the quality of my materials is fundamental to the work. I failed at that and people died." He met her eyes. "I have not touched a weapon commission since. I will not." Thessa absorbed this, turning it over in her mind. What happened to the supplier disappeared before anyone could question him, probably knew exactly what he was selling. And no one investigated. War does not leave much time for justice. The deaths went into the general tally of casualties. Only I knew the real cause. Varian picked up the rake again, needing something to do with his hands. "I told the village council, but they said it was wartime. These things happen. They wanted me to keep making weapons. I refused. So you carry all the blame alone." "It is my burden to carry." Thessa stood and crossed to where he worked. She reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and placed her hand over his. Her skin was warm, calloused from kiln work. You are not the only person who ever made a mistake that cost lives, she said. The question is what you learned from it. I learned that I cannot be trusted with that kind of work. No, you learned that cutting corners and rushing craft has consequences. You learned to know your materials absolutely. She squeezed his hand gently. Those are valuable lessons, painful but valuable. Varian looked at their joined hands, green skin and pale, work roughened both. How did you get so wise? Survival teaches hard lessons quickly. She released his hand and stepped back. But I understand guilt. I carry my own. For what? For leaving my clan. For not being strong enough to change things from within. For taking the easy path of exile rather than fighting. Thessa's voice roughened. My younger sister was betrothed to the same man after I left. She was only 15. I saved myself and abandoned her. You could not have changed that. Perhaps not, but I will never know because I ran. She met his eyes. We are both haunted people, Varian. Maybe that is why we understand each other. The conversation lingered with him for days afterward. He found himself thinking about guilt and responsibility, about the ways people carried their pasts, about the possibility of forgiveness. And he thought about Thessa's hand on his, the simple comfort of that touch. Autumn arrived with its usual fanfare of color and cooling temperatures. The kilns ran constantly, building up stores of charcoal for the winter months when weather made burning more difficult. Varian spent more time on the ridge, ostensibly helping with the heavy work, but truthfully just wanting to be there. He noticed Thessa's changes to the coat continuing. She had added fur lining to the collar for warmth. She had replaced the buttons with toggles she had carved herself from oak. She had embroidered small patterns along the cuffs, geometric designs that reminded him of orc clan markings. You are remaking that entire coat, he observed one afternoon. Thessa looked down at it. I suppose I am. Does it bother you? No, I am just wondering what you will do when there is nothing left of the original. Then it will be something new, made from the old but transformed into its own thing. She smiled slightly. A hybrid. Neither your coat nor mine, but ours. The possessive made his heart do something complicated in his chest. Varian turned away to hide his reaction, busying himself with stacking charcoal. The first real test of winter came in mid-October when a delegation from the village council arrived at his forge. Alina led them again, but this time she was accompanied by the village priest, Father Gregory, and 2 other council members. Varian, we need to talk seriously, Alina began without preamble. The situation with the orc woman has persisted too long. The village is dividing over it. People are taking sides and it is causing real problems. What kind of problems? Families are fighting. Business relationships are fracturing. Marcus has been agitating for formal action against you. Alina's face was tired, showing the strain of months of conflict. You need to end this association, for your sake and the village's peace. I have broken no laws and violated no contracts. My work remains reliable and fairly priced. Who I buy materials from is my own business. Father Gregory stepped forward. He was an older man, generally kind but conservative in his views. Varian, my son, think of your soul. Unnatural relationships between species are an offense against divine order. Is buying charcoal a relationship now? You know it is more than that. Everyone knows. The amount of time you spend with her, the coat, the way you defend her. The priest's voice softened. I understand loneliness. I know you lost your parents young, that you have built your life alone. But seeking companionship with an orc is not the answer. I am not seeking anything except quality materials and occasionally interesting conversation. Then you will not mind making a formal declaration before the council that you have no improper intentions toward this woman. Aliner's tone made it clear this was a test. Varian felt the trap closing. If he agreed, he would be locked into keeping his distance from Thessa or face accusations of lying to the council. If he refused, he essentially admitted to improper intentions. "I will not be interrogated about my personal feelings by a committee," he said finally. "My work speaks for itself. If the village is unsatisfied with my craft, they can take their business elsewhere, but I will not justify my associations to anyone." "That is your final answer." "It is," Aliner sighed. "Then I am sorry, Varian, but the council has voted. Effective immediately, you are prohibited from purchasing materials from the orc woman on the ridge. If you violate this order, your license to operate a forge within village limits will be revoked." The words hit like a physical blow. "You cannot do that. I have operated this forge for 8 years. And we have the authority to revoke trading licenses for conduct detrimental to village harmony. It is in the charter." Aliner looked genuinely regretful. "This is not personal, Varian. This is about maintaining order. It is about prejudice and fear. You are punishing Thessa for existing and me for treating her like a person. We are doing what we must to keep the peace." Aliner turned to leave, the others following. At the door, she paused. "You have until the end of the week to find an alternative charcoal source. After that, if you are caught conducting business with her, we will act." They left. Varian stood in his forge, surrounded by tools and projects, feeling the ground shift beneath him. Everything he had built, 8 years of work and reputation, threatened over charcoal and principle and something he could not even name yet. He closed the forge early and rode up to the ridge. Thessa was loading charcoal when he arrived. She looked up at the sound of his horse, and her smile faded when she saw his expression. "What happened?" he told her. "Everything. The council's order, the threat to his forge, the accusations and assumptions." Thessa listened without interrupting, her face growing more closed with each sentence. When he finished, she nodded once. "Then we are done. You will find another supplier and I will find other buyers." "No, Varian, they will destroy you. You cannot." I said no. He dismounted and faced her directly. "I am not abandoning you because the village council cannot handle the idea of orcs and humans cooperating. This is not cooperation anymore. This is you sacrificing your entire livelihood for someone you barely know. I know you well enough to understand you are worth standing with." Thessa made a frustrated sound. "Why? Why are you willing to lose everything for this?" "Because I am falling in love with you," Varian thought, and the realization struck him silent. It was true. Somewhere between the first night he had found her shivering in the rain and this moment, standing in a charcoal clearing arguing about principle. He had fallen completely and irrevocably in love with Thessa Dane. With her intelligence and her stubbornness, with the way she thought about fire and transformation, with her resilience and her hidden vulnerability. The knowledge terrified him. It also clarified everything. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said, which was true even if it was not the whole truth. "Because people should not be forced to choose between their conscience and their survival. Noble sentiments do not pay for food or shelter. Then I will figure something out. But I will not stop buying from you. I will not let them dictate who I associate with." Thessa stared at him, her dark eyes searching. "You are the most stubborn man I have ever met. Coming from you, that is impressive." He managed a slight smile. "We will find a way through this, together." "Together," she repeated softly, and something in her expression shifted, warmed. "You really mean that?" "I do." She turned away, but not before he saw her brush at her eyes. When she faced him again, her jaw was set with determination. "Then we need to solve the real problem. The council is acting on bad information and prejudice. We need to give them something that makes me impossible to ignore or dismiss. What do you have in mind? I need to prove my worth to the village, not just as a charcoal burner, but as someone with knowledge that can benefit everyone. Thessa began to pace. You said the weapons that failed did so because of bad iron. Have you had other quality problems with metal? Varian thought back. Some. Nothing as catastrophic, but yes, occasional batches that are harder to work or that crack more easily. From the same supplier. No different sources. It has been inconsistent. But you have noticed patterns, certain qualities that predict problems, sometimes. I can often tell by how the metal behaves in the forge. Color changes, the way sparks fly, how it sounds when struck. Thessa stopped pacing. Those are all symptoms of impurities in the ore. Sulfur, phosphorus, silica. Different impurities cause different behaviors. Charcoal burners learn to read similar signs in wood, but the principles are the same. Fire reveals what is hidden inside materials. You are saying you can identify bad ore, maybe. If you show me your different metals, tell me what you have observed, I can try. Her excitement was building. Gareth studied ores before he switched to charcoal. He had books, notes. I have been reading them. If I can correlate your observations with ore composition, we might be able to identify the source of the bad metal. Varian saw where she was going. If we prove that someone is still selling compromised ore to the region, that becomes a matter of public safety. Exactly. And if I am the one who helps prove it, I stop being just an orc interloper. I become someone who protected the village. It was a long shot, but it was something. They spent the rest of the afternoon making plans. Varian would bring samples of different metals he had worked with, along with his notes on their behavior. Thessa would analyze them using techniques from Gareth's books. If they could establish a pattern, they would have evidence to take to the council. The work consumed them over the next 2 weeks. Varian brought metals from his stock, pieces left over from various commissions, carefully labeled with dates and sources when he knew them. Thessa set up a testing area near the kilns, using carefully controlled fires to heat samples and observe their reactions. What emerged was alarming. 3 different metals showed signs of sulfur contamination, and all 3 had come from the same merchant, Silas Crow, a traveling trader who worked the circuit between Millhaven and 4 other villages. He was the one who sold me the iron for the spears, Varian said, staring at the evidence. I should have remembered the name. You were young and busy. He probably counted on people not tracking sources carefully. Thessa pointed to her notes. But look at the dates. He is still selling to smiths in the region. I would bet money other craftsmen have had quality problems too. The question is proving it. We have samples and observations, but no way to tie them definitively to Crow without access to his current stock. Then we need to catch him selling compromised ore and test it immediately. They developed a plan. Crow's trading route was predictable. He would be in Millhaven in 3 days for the monthly market. If they could purchase a sample of his ore, test it publicly, and demonstrate the sulfur contamination, they would have irrefutable proof. But there was a problem. Thessa could not enter the village without risking violence, and Varian conducting tests alone would look self-serving. They needed an intermediary, someone trusted, who could be the public face of the investigation. Varian thought for 2 days before landing on an answer. Peter, the older of the 2 boys who had helped rebuild the kiln. He was nearly 17 now, old enough to speak with some authority, and he had been working with Thessa long enough to respect her knowledge. More importantly, his father was on the village council. Varian approached Peter at the end of a charcoal delivery, laying out the situation carefully. The boy listened with growing interest. You want me to buy ore from Crow and let Miss Thessa test it, in front of the market crowd? publicly. So everyone can see the results. Peter chewed his lip. Father will have my hide if this goes wrong. If we are right, you will be protecting the village's craftsmen from fraud. That is heroic, not wrong. And if you are wrong, then I lose my forge and Thessa loses her livelihood and you are out the cost of the ore. But I am very certain we are right. The boy thought about it, then nodded. I will do it. Miss Thessa taught me good. I trust her. Market day arrived cold and bright. Varian waited at his forge, too anxious to work, watching the clock. Peter had instructions to make the purchase at midday when the market was busiest, then bring the ore to the forge along with anyone willing to witness the test. At noon, Varian heard voices approaching. Peter appeared, followed by a growing crowd. He carried a wrapped bundle of ore samples and behind him walked half the village, drawn by Peter's loud announcements that something important was about to happen. Sila's crow was there too, pushed along by the crowd, his face red with anger and confusion. What is this about? The merchant demanded. I have done nothing wrong. Then you have nothing to fear from a simple test, Varian replied. He had set up a testing station outside the forge, following Thessa's instructions exactly. Peter bought ore from you this morning. We are going to verify its quality. My ore is fine. I have sold it for years. Then proving it should be simple. The crowd pressed closer as Varian took a sample and placed it in a crucible with specific chemicals Thessa had prepared. He heated it over a carefully controlled flame, watching for color changes. The reaction was immediate and unmistakable. The flame burned blue-green and a foul smell rose from the crucible. Sulfur, Varian announced. High concentration. This ore is badly contaminated. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Crow sputtered protests. Elena pushed to the front. How do we know this test is legitimate? She demanded. Because it follows established metallurgical principles. Varian gestured to the setup. Anyone with knowledge of ores can verify it. The blue-green flame is diagnostic for sulfur compounds. The smell confirms it. And where did you learn this test? Here was the moment. Varian took a breath. From Thessa Dane, the charcoal burner on the ridge. She studied ore analysis under Gareth and has been helping me investigate quality problems in the region's metal supply. An orc taught you this. Marcus Trent pushed forward. And we are supposed to trust that. You are supposed to trust chemistry, Varian shot back. Elements behave consistently regardless of who observes them. But if you doubt the results, bring your own metallurgist. Test Crow's entire stock. I guarantee you will find the same contamination. Father Gregory had been examining the reaction closely. I studied some natural philosophy in seminary. This does appear to be a standard test for sulfur. The results look legitimate. More testing followed. Other smiths came forward with samples they had purchased from Crow over the years. The pattern was consistent. Not every batch was contaminated, but enough were to constitute a serious problem. Crow's protests grew more desperate until finally he broke. It is not my fault. My supplier sells me mixed ore. I cannot test every piece. I am just a middleman. A middleman who knew, or should have known, that he was selling dangerous materials, Elena said coldly. Materials that may have contributed to deaths. The crowd's mood turned ugly. Varian saw the moment it could tip into violence and stepped in. This is a matter for the market court, not mob justice. Crow needs to answer for his fraud, but through proper channels. He looked at Elena. The council should investigate his entire trading history, find everyone who bought compromised ore, make restitution where possible. Elena nodded slowly. Agreed. Crow, you are under village arrest pending a formal hearing. Your stock is impounded. As guards led the merchant away and the crowd began to disperse, Elena approached Varian. You made your point, she said quietly. The orc woman's knowledge proved valuable. Thessa. Her name is Thessa. Thessa, then. Elinar's expression was conflicted. This does not solve everything, Varian. There is still significant opposition to her presence in our supply chain. But you can hardly forbid me from buying from someone who just helped expose a major fraud. No, I suppose we cannot, Elinar sighed. The prohibition is lifted, but tread carefully. You have made enemies today. She left. Varian stood in the dispersing market, feeling the weight of the confrontation settling on his shoulders. They had won this round, but Elinar was right. The underlying tensions remained. He rode up to the ridge that evening to report. Thessa met him at the clearing, and he could see she had been pacing. How did it go? He told her everything. Her relief was visible, but it was tempered with caution. So I am acceptable now because I was useful. You are acceptable because you proved your knowledge and your commitment to quality work. It is a start, Thessa. A start toward what? Toward a future where we can be together without hiding, Varian thought. But he still had not found the courage to say those words aloud. Toward you being recognized as a valuable member of the community, he said instead. Thessa studied him for a long moment. You are holding something back. I am holding back many things. Like what? This was it. The moment to either speak truth or retreat into safety. Varian looked at her standing in his coat, wearing it like armor and comfort both, and made his choice. Like the fact that I have feelings for you that go well beyond respect for your craft. The words fell between them like stones into still water. Thessa went very still. What kind of feelings? The kind that make me ride up this ridge every week looking for excuses to stay longer. The kind that make me defend you against the entire village. The kind that make me see you in that coat and feel like something in my chest is both breaking and healing at the same time. Varian, I know it is complicated. I know the village will never fully accept it. I know I should probably be practical and cautious and all the things sensible people are. He stepped closer. But I am tired of being sensible. I am tired of pretending that buying charcoal is all I come here for. Thessa's eyes had gone wide. You cannot mean this. I have never meant anything more in my life. I am an orc. You are human. We have no future. We have whatever future we choose to build. She shook her head, but there were tears on her cheeks. You do not understand what you are asking. The cost will be enormous. I have spent 7 years paying for one mistake. I am not interested in spending the rest of my life paying for the mistake of walking away from you. This is not a mistake you made. This is a choice. Exactly. It is my choice, and I am choosing you. If you will have me. Thessa stared at him, her breath coming fast. I fell in love with you months ago, she whispered. I have been trying to hide it, trying to protect us both, but I fell in love with you the night you wrapped this coat around me and looked at me like I mattered. The admission broke something open between them. Varian closed the distance and cupped her face in his hands, careful of her tusks, and kissed her. She tasted like wood smoke and rain. Her hands came up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss was gentle and fierce at once, months of tension and longing pouring into it. When they finally broke apart, Thessa was crying in earnest. This is going to be so hard. I know. The village will fight us. I know. We might lose everything. I know. He rested his forehead against hers. But I would rather lose everything with you than keep everything without you. Thessa laughed, shaky but real. You are impossible, so I have been told. They stood wrapped in each other's arms as the sun set over the ridge, and for the first time in months, Varian felt genuinely at peace. The peace lasted approximately 3 days before reality reasserted itself. News of their relationship spread through Millhaven like wildfire. Reactions ranged from shocked disapproval to outright hostility. A few people, Peter and Samuel among them, offered cautious support. Most kept their distance, waiting to see how the situation would develop. The council called another meeting. This time, Varian went prepared. "You cannot forbid two adults from choosing their association," he said before anyone else could speak. "We have broken no laws. We are not disrupting village business. What we do in our private time is our concern." "You are conducting a relationship with a non-human," Father Gregory said. "That is against natural law. Natural law seems to have no problem with it, given that we are both here, healthy and harming no one." Marcus Trent slammed his hand on the table. "This is an abomination. If you continue down this path, you force us to take action." "What action?" "You already tried to ban me from buying her charcoal. That failed. What else will you do? Run me out of town? Good luck maintaining your tools and equipment without a smith." Alina raised her hands for quiet. "Varian, be reasonable. We are not trying to punish you. We are trying to help you see sense. This relationship has no future. Even if we tolerated it, which is uncertain, what kind of life could you build? Where would you live? How would children be raised? Those are questions for Thessa and me to answer, not the council. But they affect the village. If you have children, what are they? Where do they belong? They belong wherever we raise them to belong, and they would be fortunate to have Thessa's intelligence and my stubbornness." The meeting went in circles for an hour before Alina finally called a halt. "We cannot forbid you from this relationship, but neither can we endorse it. The village's official position is neutrality. What individuals choose to do is their business." It was the best Varian could have hoped for, but it left them in a precarious position. Tolerated but not accepted, allowed but not welcomed. Over the following months, they built a life in that uncertain space. Varian continued running his forge, though his customer base remained smaller than before. Thessa continued burning charcoal, and their business relationship provided cover for their personal one. Winter arrived in force, and Varian spent more nights on the ridge, helping Thessa keep the kilns running through snow and ice. The cabin became a refuge, a place where they could be themselves without watching eyes or judging voices. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. About their childhoods and their dreams, about the nature of fire and the properties of different woods, about the future they might build together. Varian learned that Thessa sang while working, old orc songs about transformation and endurance. Thessa learned that Varian had wanted to be a scholar before his parents' death forced him into a trade. "You regret it?" she asked one night as they sat by her hearth. "Not getting to study?" "Sometimes, but smithing taught me things books could not. The way materials behave under stress, the importance of patience, the satisfaction of making something useful." He smiled at her. "And it brought me to you eventually. So no, I do not regret the path." Thessa leaned against his shoulder. "I regret leaving my sister. I think about her constantly. Wonder if she is safe, if she managed to escape that marriage somehow. You could try to find her." "How? I do not even know if she is still with the clan. She could be anywhere." Thessa's voice carried old pain. "I was a coward, Varian. I ran away instead of fighting." "You were 15 and facing an impossible situation. That is not cowardice. That is survival. It does not feel like survival when I wonder every day if she needed me and I was not there." Varian had no good answer for that kind of guilt. He simply held her, offering presents if not solutions. Spring came gradually, ice giving way to mud and mud to green shoots. With the better weather, travel increased, and one afternoon a group of orc traders appeared in Millhaven's market. Varian was at the forge when Peter came running. "There are orcs in the village, a whole merchant group. And one of them is asking about Thessa Dane." Varian's heart jumped. He locked the forge and followed Peter to the market square. The orc merchants were setting up a stall, and they drew stares from the villagers. They were clearly from a prosperous clan, their clothes well-made and their goods high quality. One of them, a woman perhaps in her 30s, was speaking with a leaner. "I am looking for a woman named Thessa Dane," the orc merchant was saying. "We heard she lives in this region." "Do you know where I can find her?" Eleanor's expression was guarded. "Who is asking? My name is Vera. I am her older sister." Varian felt the world tilt. He stepped forward before Eleanor could respond. "I know where she is. I can take you to her." Vera turned, and her eyes widened slightly when she took in his appearance. "You are human." "I am, and I am a friend of your sister's." "A friend." Vera's tone suggested she heard more than that word. "Is she well, safe?" "She is both. Come, I will bring you to her." They rode up to the ridge together, Vera on a sturdy pony and Varian on his mare. The orc woman was quiet for most of the journey, but as they climbed, she spoke. "Thessa ran away from our clan 6 years ago. We thought she was dead. She has been surviving. Barely for a while, but she found work and purpose. With you, with an old man who taught her charcoal burning. I came later." Vera studied him. "You speak of her with great care. Are you courting my sister? No point in lying. I am, with her permission." "A human courting an orc. That must be complicated." "It is, but she is worth the complications." They arrived at the clearing to find Thessa tending the kilns. She looked up at the sound of horses, and when she saw Vera, the color drained from her face. "Vera," the sisters stared at each other across the clearing. Then Thessa dropped her tools and ran. They met in the middle, colliding in a fierce embrace. Varian dismounted and gave them space, watching as 6 years of separation poured out in tears and rapid words in the orc language. Finally, Thessa pulled back, her face wet. "How did you find me?" "Traders talk. Word spreads. Someone mentioned an orc woman running charcoal kilns in the human territories, and I had to know if it was you." Vera gripped her sister's shoulders. "I have been looking for you for years. I thought you would hate me for running, for leaving you." "Hate you?" "Thessa, I helped you escape. I packed your bag and gave you food and told you to run." Vera's eyes were bright with tears. "I could not leave myself. I was already betrothed, and breaking that would have ruined the entire family. But I could save you." "What happened? Did you have to marry?" "No. He died in a hunting accident 3 months after you left. I eventually married a man of my own choosing. We are happy." Vera glanced at Varian. "But tell me about you, about this human who looks at you like you hung the stars." Thessa's cheeks darkened. "His name is Varian. He is a blacksmith. He is also stubborn and kind and impossible." I heard the impossible part. They spent the afternoon together, 3 of them in the cabin, while Thessa and Vera caught up on years of life. Varian learned about the clan, about the politics and traditions, about Thessa's other siblings and her parents who had grieved her disappearance. "They would want to know you are alive," Vera said. "You could come back, visit at least." Thessa looked at Varian. "My life is here now." "With him?" "Yes," Vera nodded slowly. "Then I am glad you found someone good. The spirits know you deserve happiness." She turned to Varian. "Treat her well, Smith. She is fiercer than she looks." "I know," Varian said. "I count on it." Vera stayed for 2 days, meeting the village people with Thessa, seeing the kilns and the work. When she left, she hugged Thessa tightly. "Come see us someday. Bring your Smith. I want our children to know their aunt." After she left, Thessa was quiet for a long time. Varian found her at sunset, standing at the edge of the clearing looking north toward where her clan lived. "Are you thinking of visiting?" he asked. "Maybe. Someday." She turned to him. "But not yet. I am not ready to face all of that. Whenever you are ready, I will go with you." "To an orc clan. You would be the only human there." "You are the only orc here most days. Seems fair." She laughed and took his hand. "Thank you, for giving me space to talk with Vera, for being kind to her. She is your sister, and she clearly loves you very much." They stood together as twilight deepened, and Varian felt pieces of Thessa's past clicking into place. She was not just the woman who burned charcoal on the ridge. She was part of a family, a clan, a history, and she had chosen to build a future with him despite all of that. Summer brought new challenges. A merchant group from a larger town arrived in Millhaven, representing a consortium interested in expanding their ironwork supply chain. They approached Varian with an offer: exclusive contracts, guaranteed volume, significantly higher prices. The catch was the location. They wanted him to move to their town, set up a larger forge, and focus entirely on their commissions. "It is a tremendous opportunity," Alina said when Varian mentioned it. "You could rebuild everything you have lost here, make a real name for yourself." Varian sat in his forge, the offer letter on his workbench, and thought about what leaving would mean. A fresh start, financial security, escape from the constant tension of being the smith who loved an orc, but it would also mean leaving Thessa. The merchants wanted an answer within a week. Varian agonized over it, running through scenarios and possibilities. Could Thessa come with him? Would she be accepted in a larger town, or would the problem simply repeat at a bigger scale? He rode up to the ridge on the fourth day and found Thessa splitting wood. She looked up when he arrived, and whatever she saw in his face made her set down the axe. "What is wrong?" he told her about the offer. "Everything. The money, the opportunity, the prestige, the fact that it would mean leaving Millhaven and her behind." Thessa listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "You should take it." "What?" "It is a good opportunity, the kind that does not come twice. You would be foolish to refuse because of me." "I would be foolish to accept and lose you." "Varian, we both knew this could not last forever. The village tolerates us, but barely. You have lost business, respect, standing. This is your chance to get all of that back. I do not want it back if it costs you." Thessa's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I am not worth destroying your future over. You are worth everything." He crossed to her and took her hands. "I am not taking that offer. I am staying here. You are an idiot, probably, but I am your idiot if you will still have me." She pulled her hands free, and for a moment he thought she would send him away. Instead, she reached into the pocket of the coat, his coat that she had worn for nearly a year now, and drew out something small. "I have been waiting for the right moment to give you this," she said quietly. "I thought maybe there would be a perfect time, a romantic setting, something worthy of a story. But I am realizing there is no perfect time. There is just now and us, and the choice to be together or not." She opened her hand. In her palm lay a ring forged from iron, the band etched with delicate patterns that matched the embroidery on the coat's cuffs. "I made this from a nail you threw away months ago," Thessa said. "Heated it, shaped it, worked it until it was something new. I was going to ask if you would wear it. If you would make this official in whatever way we can." Varian stared at the ring, his heart pounding. "You are asking me to marry you. I am asking if you want to, if you are willing to bind yourself to an orc woman with no clan, no status, no guarantee of acceptance anywhere." Her voice shook. "I am asking if I am enough. You are more than enough. You are everything." He took the ring and slid it onto his finger. It fit perfectly. "Yes, absolutely yes." Thessa's face broke into a radiant smile. Then she was kissing him, fierce and joyful, and Varian wrapped his arms around her and held on. When they finally parted, Thessa was laughing. "We are going to have to figure out how to do this. The village will not conduct a ceremony for us. Then we will do it ourselves. Or we will find someone who will. Or we will simply declare ourselves married and dare anyone to argue." Varian grinned. "I am flexible on methods but not on outcomes." They spent the evening making plans. A private ceremony, just the two of them, speaking vows by the kilns that had brought them together. They would invite Peter and Samuel, Vera if she could travel, maybe a few others who had shown support. It would not be a traditional wedding. It would not be recognized by the village authorities or blessed by the church. But it would be theirs, and that was all that mattered. The ceremony took place on a clear autumn afternoon, exactly 1 year after Varian had first found Thessa shivering in the rain. They stood in the clearing by the rebuilt kiln, wearing their best clothes. Thessa wore a dress her sister had sent, deep blue with silver embroidery. Varian wore a new shirt and vest, though Thessa had requested he also wear his second-best work coat since she was keeping the first. Peter and Samuel were there, along with a handful of village people who had quietly supported them. Vera had made the journey again, bringing her husband and their young daughter. Elinor had not come, but she had sent a note that wished them well and tacitly acknowledged the marriage. They had written their own vows, simple and direct. Varian went first. Thessa, I vow to stand with you in the face of any challenge. I vow to value your mind and your strength. I vow to build a life with you that honors both of us. This I swear by iron and fire. Thessa's voice was steady. Varian, I vow to walk beside you, not behind or ahead. I vow to challenge you and comfort you in equal measure. I vow to choose you every day for all the days we are given. This I swear by iron and fire. They exchanged rings. Thessa had made a matching band for Varian to give her, wrought from the same nail, 2 halves of a whole. Vera pronounced them married by the customs of her clan, and Samuel nervously announced them wed by the laws of friendship, which was not official but felt important anyway. Then they celebrated with food and drink. Music from a fiddle Samuel played and stories shared as the sun set. It was small and strange and perfect. When everyone else had left, Varian and Thessa stood alone by the dying fire. She still wore the coat over her dress, and he still wore the ring she had made. So we are married now, Thessa said. We are. And nothing has changed except everything, Varian laughed. That sounds about right. They went into the cabin together, and for the first time, it was truly their shared home. The following months brought adjustments and challenges. Varian effectively moved his residence to the ridge, though he kept the forge in the village operating. It meant long days traveling back and forth, but the arrangement worked. Some villagers continued to disapprove, but most grew accustomed to the situation. The smith had married an orc. It was strange, but he still shod horses and repaired plows, so life went on. What changed more significantly was Varian's work. Free from the weight of his old guilt, he began to experiment with new techniques. Thessa's knowledge of materials and combustion opened possibilities he had never considered. Together, they developed new alloys, improved tempering methods, created tools that were lighter and stronger than traditional designs. Word spread. Craftsmen from other villages began seeking out Varian's work specifically because of its quality. The irony was not lost on him. Partnering with an orc had initially cost him business. Now it was bringing him more work than he could handle alone. In the spring, an opportunity arose that changed everything again. The regional governor announced plans to build a new stone bridge over the river that separated Millhaven from the next township. It was an ambitious project, requiring massive amounts of ironwork for reinforcement and railings. The commission was open to competitive bid, and Varian spent weeks preparing his proposal. He designed an iron framework that would integrate with the stone, distributing weight and providing lasting strength. He calculated material needs, timelines, costs. And he credited Thessa's charcoal and metallurgical knowledge explicitly in the proposal, making it clear that this was a partnership. The day the governor's representative came to review his bid, Varian brought him to the ridge. Showed him the kilns, the quality of the charcoal, the testing methods they had developed. Introduced him to Thessa as his partner in both business and life. The representative, a pragmatic man named Julian, looked at the work and the materials and the two of them standing side by side. "Unconventional," he said finally, "but impressive. Your design is superior to the other bids, and if your materials are as good as you claim, the bridge will outlast us all." Varian got the commission. The news sent ripples through the region. The governor's bridge project was prestigious, and being selected meant official recognition of Varian's skill. It also meant, implicitly, recognition of his partnership with Thessa. A leaner came to the forge the day after the announcement. "You have put Millhaven on the map, Varian. This commission will bring attention and trade to the entire village. I am glad to help the village, though I notice you are more enthusiastic about my marriage now that it has brought prestige." A leaner had the grace to look embarrassed. "People change. Opinions change. You and Thessa proved yourselves repeatedly against all doubts. That earns respect. What about Father Gregory, Marcus Trent, the others who called us abomination? Marcus left for Oakridge last month. Could not handle the changing times. Father Gregory still disapproves, but he is a practical man. He knows the village needs you." A leaner met his eyes. "You won, Varian. Not perfectly, not completely, but you won." The bridge project consumed the next year. Varian hired assistants, including Peter, who had proven himself reliable and skilled. They worked in shifts, Varian forging the structural iron at his workshop and lighter decorative elements at the ridge forge he and Thessa built together. Thessa managed the charcoal supply for the entire project, expanding her operation to 3 kilns. She hired help, including 2 orc workers Vera sent from their clan, and the ridge clearing became a small industry. The bridge took shape slowly, stone and iron rising over the water in an arch that was both functional and beautiful. Varian had designed decorative railings that incorporated patterns from both human and orc traditions, a visual representation of the partnership that made the project possible. On the day of the bridge dedication, a crowd gathered from both townships. The governor himself attended, giving a speech about progress and cooperation, about the importance of judging work by its quality rather than the hands that made it. Then he invited Varian and Thessa to cut the ceremonial ribbon. They stood together at the center of the bridge, and Varian felt the solidity of the iron beneath his feet, the strength of the design holding firm. Beside him, Thessa wore the coat, repaired and reinforced so many times it barely resembled the original. She had added a final modification that morning, a pocket over the heart with his ring stitched into the seam, visible to anyone who looked closely. "You are finally giving it back?" he asked quietly. She smiled. "I am giving it forward, to us, to the life we built together." They cut the ribbon and the crowd cheered. The bridge was opened and people streamed across it, marveling at the craftsmanship. Later, as the celebration continued, a leaner found them. "The council wants to formally apologize for our initial treatment of you both. We were wrong. This project proved that conclusively." "Apology accepted," Varian said, "though I hope the lesson extends beyond just us. It will. Change is slow, but it happens. You started something important here." After the dedication, life settled into a new rhythm. The bridge brought trade through Millhaven, and prosperity followed. Varian's forge expanded into a workshop with multiple smiths. Thessa's charcoal operation became the primary supplier for 3 villages. They built a new house on the ridge, larger than the old cabin, with space for a workshop and a library. Varian finally got his books, and Thessa filled the shelves with texts on chemistry, metallurgy, and natural philosophy alongside his engineering volumes. 2 years after the bridge dedication, Thessa told Varian she was pregnant. The news brought joy and terror in equal measure. Neither of them knew exactly what to expect from a half-orc, half-human child. Would it be healthy? Would it be accepted? How would they navigate the complications of raising a child between two worlds? Vera came to stay for the last months of the pregnancy, bringing knowledge from orc midwives and the calm presence of someone who had been through this before. When Thessa went into labor on a cold winter night, Vera and the village midwife worked together, and after hours of difficulty, a baby's cry filled the house. Their daughter was perfect. She had green-tinted skin lighter than Thessa's, small tusks that would grow larger with time, and pointed ears. She had Varian's dark hair and Thessa's eyes. She was strong and healthy and absolutely beautiful. They named her Violet Dane, combining both their surnames because they could not choose between them. Violet's arrival changed everything and nothing. The village accepted her with surprising ease. Children did not carry the same prejudices as adults, and she grew up playing with human and orc children both when Vera's family visited. Varian and Thessa raised her between the forge and the kilns, teaching her both trades. By the time she was 5, she could identify ore quality by sight and judge charcoal by sound. By 7, she was helping with simple forge work, her strength already exceeding human children her age. They had more children. 2 years after Violet came Kira, who looked almost entirely human except for slight points to her ears. Then Hazel, who was the image of her mother. Their house filled with noise and laughter and the constant chaos of family life. The workshop and kilns thrived. Varian took on apprentices, teaching them not just smithing but the importance of understanding materials and working with integrity. Several of Thessa's workers went on to start their own charcoal operations, spreading her techniques across the region. The bridge stood solid, becoming a landmark and a symbol. People called it the Unity Bridge, and stories spread about the unlikely partnership that had built it. On a warm evening 15 years after the night Varian had first wrapped his coat around a shivering orc girl, he and Thessa sat on the porch of their house watching the sunset. Their children were scattered across the clearing, Violet demonstrating kiln maintenance to her younger sisters while neighbors' children watched with interest. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Thessa asked. She was mending one of Hazel's dresses, her hands moving with practiced ease. "Sometimes, if I had not ridden up the ridge that night, if you had given up on the kilns, if either of us had been more sensible and less stubborn, we would have missed all of this." "Yes." Thessa set down her mending and looked at him. "I never gave your coat back," Varian laughed. "I noticed. I transformed it into something else, something that belonged to both of us. You transformed a lot of things, including me. We transformed each other. That is what partnership means." Violet called out a question about vent timing, and Thessa rose to answer it. Varian watched his wife move between their daughters, explaining and demonstrating with the same patient competence she had shown that first day rebuilding the kiln. The coat hung on a hook by the door now, worn and patched and absolutely irreplaceable. It had survived sparks and weather, repairs and modifications, years of constant use. It had become a testament to transformation, to the possibility of creating something new from old materials. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Varian stood at his workbench examining a commission. Thessa came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "What are you making?" "A gate for the new school. They want something decorative but sturdy." "And you will give them something beautiful. You always do." She rested her cheek against his shoulder. I love you, Varian Darrow Dane. He turned in her arms, pulling her close. I love you, Thessa Darrow Dane, today and every day. They stood together in the quiet workshop, surrounded by tools and materials and the evidence of lives well lived. Outside, the kilns glowed softly in the darkness, transforming wood into fuel, continuing the work that had brought them together. It had not been an easy road. There had been challenges and opposition, moments of doubt and fear. But they had faced everything together, building a life from their partnership that was stronger than either could have created alone. The coat still hung by the door, and neither of them had any intention of putting it away. It was a reminder of where they started, of the moment when a simple act of kindness had opened the door to something neither of them had expected but both had chosen to nurture. Years later, when Violet left to start her own forge in a distant town, she asked to take the coat with her. "It is your history," she said, "yours and Mother's, the proof that different worlds can come together and create something new." Thessa and Varian looked at each other, then at their eldest daughter, so strong and confident and ready to forge her own path. "Keep it safe," Thessa said, placing the coat in Violet's hands. "And when the time comes, pass it on to someone who needs reminding that transformation is possible." Violet wore it as she left, and Varian felt the circle complete. The coat that had started as protection against cold had become something much larger, a symbol passed forward to the next generation. He and Thessa stood on the porch, watching their daughter ride away toward her future, and he reached for her hand. "No regrets?" she asked softly. "Not a single one. You. Only that I did not find you sooner." They stayed there as twilight deepened into night, two people who had chosen each other against all expectations and built a life that proved love could bridge any divide. The kilns glowed behind them, steady and eternal, transforming ordinary wood into the fuel that powered creation. It was good work. It was their work, and it was enough.